Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. First of all, thank you to the organizer, the Library of University of Malaysia Sabah, for inviting me to become as one of the panel to discuss about something related on Islamic banking. Okay, today I'm going to talk about the misconception of Islamic banking in Malaysia. Basically, this topic is considered as very important for two main reasons. The first one is related to the issue of improving the customer base of Islamic banking. And the second one, why do I have to improve this misconception, is because it will be affecting the conception among those of the millennial in order to patronize the Islamic banking products. Before we are going further by highlighting the Islamic banking misconception, I would like to draw your attention with regard to the historical part of Islamic banking. When we are talking about Islamic banking, the idea was initiated in 1980s, and to be exact, it was in 1981. During that time, we have the National Steering Committee introduced by the governments, and then it was chaired by a person named Yang Mulia Tan Sri Mohar Raja Badio Zaman, and the secretariat involved during that time was Lembaga Tabung Haji. And ideally, during that time, the steering committee is intended to develop a kind of report in order to suggest what would be a proper model for Islamic banking. And then at the end of the day, what we can believe through that committee, the objective are basically diverse, but they are just trying to pinpoint at least about three objectives. The first one, they would like to suggest the technical issue and technical release that will be able to capture what will be a proper model of Islamic banking in Malaysia. And secondly, it is related to the compatibility issue, which means that the introduced Islamic banking will be compatible with the Islamic banking development in Malaysia, not following the other countries, but we are aiming to develop our own particular Islamic banking model. And lastly, it is about basically try to provide a very concrete report, and that report will be presented to the governments of Malaysia in terms about the regulatory framework, in terms about the capital involved, or in terms about the customer base related for that particular Islamic banking system. More importantly, when we are talking about Islamic banking, we always be in a good shape and position to highlight that it is related to the individual knowledge, in that when we are talking about Islamic banking, it is about the riba, it is about the prohibitions of riba. But in many contexts, this is defined as a very universal golden principle of Islamic banking in Malaysia as well as in the other countries. But when we are talking about the idea of Islamic banking, we have also to understand that it is not only limited to the prohibitions of riba or the prohibitions of interest, but can also be extended to capture the prohibitions of gharar, the prohibitions of maizir. Gharar is something related to the uncertainty in the contract. Say for example, when the contract is not very certain and that uncertainty is very, very huge. If that happens, basically that will be defined as not in line with the Sharia compliance, and supposedly will be voided in a specific contract related to Islamic banking transactions. So generally speaking, when we are talking about gharar here, it is about uncertainty in the contract. and more importantly, it can be broken down into small and also big classification. When it comes for the big classification, it is related to Gara Fahis, whereby on the other hand, for the small one is Gara Yazir, something related on that particular terminologies. And then at the same time also it is related to the prohibitions of Maizir. So what does it mean really by the terms of the prohibition of Maizir? Here is related to gambling. When we are talking about gambling, we always be highlighting the significance of a zero-sum game. So what does it mean really? It is related to one particular person is gaining about 100%, but on the other hand, the other party is gaining about 0%. So it is about the net change in that particular wealth is about zero. So one party will be winning all of the portion, whereby the other party will be losing all of the particular portions of the wealth. It is defined as a zero-sum game. And when we are talking about the beauty of this golden principle, right, we are believing that this is a kind of universal principle to be known and familiar by all of the individuals around the globe, not only in a very specific geography like in Malaysia, but also can be defined from other countries like Indonesia, like Brunei, as well as the Philippines, whereby they learn the developments of Islamic banking. Those countries, for example, Indonesia, Brunei, and also Philippines from Malaysia, the model that they are having today basically derived from Malaysia. And when I'm talking about the development, right, there will be some factor why the Islamic banking need to be introduced, especially in Malaysia. But in my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, there are two particular factors that we learn. The first one, it is external factor, and the second one is an internal factor. Okay, when we are talking about the external factor here, it is related to the developments of first Islamic bank, a very modern Islamic bank in Egypt. It is known as a Midgam, and it was one of the very important development for the modern Islamic banking in the world, and also affecting our country in developing a very formal institutions. At the same time, also when we are talking about the external, right, you can find the other country as well. For instance, UAE, they introduced a Dubai Islamic Bank in 1975 for the same purpose, in order to celebrate the beauty of Sharia compliance in offering the Islamic banking product and services significantly. And because of that also, it has been affecting our country to introduce a very formal institutions. But the idea was initiated in 1959 by Yang Mulia Professor Dr. Ungku Aziz, whereby during that time in 1959 he was presented a very good paper, and that presentation is basically in front of the government representative. The title of the presentation was Pilgrim Improvement Economic Plan, whereby it is a kind of plan how we are able to improve and also mobilize the potential pilgrim money or fund, for them to perform their own Hajj to Mecca, importantly during that times. But due to that development, right, we have a very concrete argument that it has been leading to the introduced Islamic bank, very formal Islamic bank in Malaysia. It was in 1983. And the first Islamic bank that we familiar and also new until today was Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad, introduced in 1983. And then it was under the jurisdictions of Islamic Banking Act in 1983, and then controlled by Bank Negara Malaysia. But it is a kind of development that we believe, right? But I'm trying to highlight from the other angle as well, especially when we are talking about Islamic banking. Some of us will be having a kind of argument how Islamic bank can generate money, how Islamic bank can generate profit when the bank itself is not practicing the interest taking or interest bearing activity. For instance, when the bank is extending loan, then they will be able to get the interest income, right, imposed on the loan extended to the customer. Or even on the other hand, the bank will be able to get the interest by extending that facility in a very different product. Okay, for example, mortgage, for example, personal loan, or even the other things. I mean, to a certain extent, can be also related to pawnbroking activities. But then we realized how an Islamic bank can generate income. Okay, in my point of view, at least about three methods how Islamic bank can generate income. In the first place, Islamic bank involved in trading activities. So which means that when we are talking about the trading activity, the bank will be having their own commodity, and then at the same time also they will be selling that particular commodity to the customer. And this is best reflected in the context of tawaruk financing. For instance, if I want to get 20,000 from an Islamic bank, then I will approach an Islamic bank and then ask for the particular facility. But the bank will not be approving as is. I mean, there will be some processes that need to be completed for Sharia compliance. And what is happening, basically, an Islamic bank will be taking the commodity, which means that the bank will be purchasing the commodity from Bursa Suq Al Sila and for ownership, and then that particular commodity will be selling to me as the customer. But in that particular regard, I'm not going to take a very direct possession. I just try to have a look at that particular commodity, and then I will be asking the bank to resell to the Bursa Suq Asila, mainly to the second broker, in order to get that particular cash money or liquidity. In line with my own intention to get that kind of financing facility. And through that particular basis, Islamic bank will be able to get income to be defined as a profit rate. And the first method to be used by an Islamic bank, how an Islamic bank can generate income, is basically through trading activity. The bank will buy the commodity, and then the bank will sell the commodity to the customer, mainly in the context of tawaruk that we believe already imposed in Malaysia widely. And the second way how an Islamic bank can generate income is through joint venture. We have musyarakah, we have also mudarabah, we have also wakala. For example, when I come for the mudarabah, basically what we can believe, Islamic bank will become as a mudarif, whereby the customer will become as a rabumal. So as a mudarif, the bank will be taking and accumulated the money, and then what they can do at the end of the day, they will be investing the money in a very halal sector of economy. And then through that particular investment, the investment will be generating profit, and that generated profit will be shared between the bank and also the customer. Frankly speaking. And the last way how an Islamic bank can generate income is basically through what we can define here, service, by providing service. And that service will be imposed with certain fee, whereby when the customer try to utilize that particular service, the bank will be imposing fee. Say for example, the utilizations of ATM machine, and then at the end of the month, or even for that particular different set of how many withdrawal of money have been made will be defined as the way how an Islamic bank can generate the fee-based income. For instance, when we are talking about Maybank Islamic Berhad, as we believe introduced in 2008, this bank, one of the ways how this particular bank can generate income is by imposing 50 cents money withdrawal for the PIP 1 when the customer is utilizing ATM machine. So the ATM machine, I'm utilizing it for at least about 4 times. The first 4 will be free, but the subsequent one, the fifth one, will be imposed with a charge of 50 cents. So this is the way how an Islamic bank can generate income to a certain extent. And on the other hand, I also like to define a kind of good understanding here with regard to discrepancies between Islamic and also the conventional bank when we are talking about how they operate, and then how the mechanism they are utilizing in order to being distinct from one to another. So in this case, I would like to give at least about 3 particular differentiator. The first differentiator here is in terms about the basis of pricing. When I'm talking about Islamic bank, the basis of pricing utilized is profit rate. Why profit rate? Because the contract associated with an Islamic bank is basically based on the idea of trading. For example, we have Tawaruk, we have Bay Al-Ina still being offered by one of the bank in Malaysia, Public Islamic Bank. Even in other countries, right? For instance, in Indonesia, Bay Al-Ina already condemned, not in line with the Sharia compliance, but in Malaysia still being offering due to the fatwa, as well as what I'm trying to say here is not the fatwa per se from the state government, but it is the ruling by Bank Negara Malaysia through National Sharia Advisory Council still give a green light for Bay Al-Ina to be introduced. So what I'm trying to say here that this Bay Al-Ina is considered one of the sale-based contract along with Tawaruk to a certain extent. But in majority today in Malaysia, we are offering the product on the base of Tawaruk. The contract utilized. But the basis of pricing used is profit rate. Why profit rate? Because it is a sale-based contract. It is a trading transaction involving the seller and also the buyer. Say for example, when it comes to the financing facility, right? The seller will be an Islamic bank, whereby the buyer in this case will be the customer of an Islamic bank. That will be a kind of way of making our understandings better. And when it comes for a conventional bank, the basis of pricing is interest rate. So the interest rate and profit rate is basically different. Why interest rate is considered to be different as compared to the profit rate? Since the profit rate is based on the trading, based on the sale-based transaction. But on the other hand, when it comes for the interest rate, it is done on the basis of loan agreement. It is a loan contract involving between a debtor and also creditor. Say for example, if I'm approaching a conventional bank XYZ, mainly when I'm approaching the bank, right? So the bank will be pinpointing that the bank will be able to generate the income in the forms of interest income. But what is very unique here, the creditor will be the bank, because the bank will be extending that kind of a loan. On the other hand, the customer will be a debtor. So just try to give you this kind of perspective, ladies and gentlemen, in that when it comes for the best of pricing for Islamic bank, we are utilizing profit rate. For conventional bank, we are utilizing interest rate. Number one. And number two, when we are talking about Say for instance, right, how the income is generated. I already addressed that one, but let me try to give you a good opinion with regard to the late payment charges. Late payment charges, especially when I'm approaching an Islamic bank, and then there will be a time whereby I not be able to service my monthly installments. The bank still will be imposing a kind of LPC, the acronym, late payment charges. And these late payment charges to be broken down into the first one, tawid, and the second one will be garama. The tawid here will be defined as a compensation, whereby garama will be defined as a penalty. In a very good context in Malaysia, right, the bank, Islamic bank, will be imposing 1% tawid, but on the other hand they can also impose garama. But garama here, the proceed from garama will not be considered as the income for the bank, will not be considered as the income for the bank, or even the tawid here will not be defined as the income for the bank, but instead will be defined as the compensation. Or by the compensation here is related to the clerical work done, or even the administration related to the delay in monthly installment payment by the customer. So by definition there will be a kind of discrepancy, right? Tawid and also garama. But when it comes for conventional bank, they just simply impose the penalty, and then it can be as high as 8%, as compared to Islamic bank it's only 1% tawid, but it's not defined as penalty, but defined as a compensation, pampasan. But on the other hand, when it comes for the conventional bank, it's defined as penalty, and that penalty is considered as one of the fraction of conventional bank profit or income to a certain extent. So that will be the thing that we need to define properly. Let me try to repeat the thing that I'm saying just now relating to LPC. When it comes for Islamic bank, we have the two elements. The first one will be tawid, and the second one will be garama. But tawid here considered as compensation, garama considered as penalty. But that penalty will not be defined as the income for the bank, but instead they will be channeled out to Baitul Mal or even other NGOs. But when it comes for conventional bank, in reality what they try to highlight, right, that particular amount of penalty that they earn, say for example 8%, will be defined as the income of a conventional bank. I mean, that would be number 2, and number 3 probably that I would like to suggest here. When it comes for Islamic bank, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special party in Islamic bank in order to ensure all of the activity conducted will be in line with Sharia. The committee that is fully responsible, to ensure everything from A to Z, the product to be offered, or even the pricing, or even in terms about the modus operandi, the mechanistic, the stages of the offer of the product, to be in line with Sharia. And those of the party to be called as a Sharia advisor. And this Sharia advisor is fully responsible to ensure that the operation of Islamic bank is free from any bias elements of non-Sharia compliant risks. But on the other hand, their role need to be integrated with board of director, and we also have the management that will be fully support their own particular existence. On the other hand, when it comes for the conventional bank, this Sharia advisor is not in existence due to the reason they just simply provide the loan agreement, and then there will be no requirement to do so. But when it comes for the Islamic bank, that requirement is given priority, especially when it is addressed by Sharia Governance Policy document 2019. So just a kind of 3 differentiators that I can share with all of you. And now let me try to give you what will be the misconception when it comes for Islamic banking in Malaysia. The first one that I would like to highlight here is about the customer base. So when we are talking about Islamic bank, the customer base here is not only to combine those of the Muslim, as we believe when it comes for the case of tabung haji, whereby you can find that from A to Z the customer were those Muslim, and that kind of perception during that time, right, when the first Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad introduced in 1983, and then you can find some people, they are believing this particular banking institution is only to combine to those Muslim to reflect tabung haji. I mean, to a certain extent, right? But in a very real situation, an Islamic bank is not only to combine to those of the non-Muslim, but can be extended to diverse customer. I mean, covering Muslim, right? Covering non-Muslim. I mean to be exact here. Say for example, in 2007, still remember whereby there was a kind of acknowledgement by Raji Bank, operated in Kuala Lumpur, stated that about 52% of the bank customer, basically they are from non-Muslim. So 52% non-Muslim, or only about 48% Muslim. So which means that when we are talking about the customer base of Islamic bank, it's not only confined to those of the Muslim or even those of the non-Muslim, but they are covering a very holistic manner. So that would be the first misconception that I would like to suggest. Even it is already done in the past, but we can look that from time to time, because the sharing is very green and can be very refreshing on social media. So it needs to be understood, on the other hand, that the customer base for Islamic bank is not only confined to non-Muslim or even to Muslim, but they are very holistic. Or even the foreigner can become a part of the committee of an Islamic bank, like what we believe, right? If you go to some universities in Peninsula or even in Sabah or even in Sarawak, you can find there will be some lecturer, right? They are from Pakistan or from Uganda, and then they're opening their own banking account in Islamic bank. That will be the first misconception that I would like to stress in firstly. Secondly, it is about related to the importance of the issue of why do I have to approach an Islamic bank? Why do I have to approach an Islamic bank? So there will be a misconception indicating that Islamic bank lead to bankruptcy. Islamic bank lead to bankruptcy. But ideally, ladies and gentlemen, it is based on a kind of calculation from the individual perspective. Before an individual try to approach an Islamic bank for the financing facility, they have to understand about their particular capacity. But at the same time, also this capacity already highlighted by one of the very good bank in Malaysia, Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad. When the bank is aiming to approve the financing facility, they will be looking a very comprehensive manner from A to Z in terms about the credit worthiness of the customer before they are releasing the financing facility, and on the other hand, to be approving the financing facility. Significantly related to that kind of issue, whereby in the past people will be saying that Islamic bank will lead you to bankruptcy when you're having a kind of amount of debt more than 50,000. Then you will be entitled to get into that kind of bankruptcy trend or situation. But in reality, no, something like that in Islamic bank, for instance, Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad, they have a very good analysis, and that particular analysis indicating about the credit worthiness, the capacity, or the collateral, the character of the individual, or even any condition that will be affecting the individual already taken into consideration before. In the current situation, in the past, not today. Still remember whereby when an Islamic bank tried to advertise one of the Islamic personal financing product, they are giving a kind of priority that this financing facility will be better and useful. Okay, I just try to continue, right? For example, if I try to go to Bali for, for traveling, basically that kind of purpose will not be considered as one of the very important basis of philosophy for the financing policy for Islamic bank. The Islamic financing should be given for the purpose of fulfilling the basic need, rather than basically for enjoying something related like a traveling, and this is the one which is not a compromise when it comes for an Islamic bank financing policy, like in the case of personal financing. And number 3 here that I would like to suggest when it comes for the misconception is related to the importance of some people, they will be defining that Islamic banking is derived from the Almighty Allah Azza wa Jalla. It's not something like that, ladies and gentlemen. Islamic banking is developed by human. Islamic banking is developed by human, but when the management, when the individual is developing this particular system, they will be depending on 4 particular primary sources derived from Islam. The first one, they will be looking at the Quran. The second one, they will be looking at the Hadith, and the third one, they will be looking at Qiyas, and the last one, they will be looking at Ijma. Those of the particular primary sources are related. So, which means that if I'm saying that this Islamic banking is immune from the financial crisis, it will not be true. The system, by definition, is very concrete. It is objective, but when it comes for the implementation, the implementation part here is derived from human. Human is a little bit subjective. When ethics comes into play, when the good governance comes into play, then we believe the Islamic banking will be operated better and better. So that will be number 3 related, right? So which means that when it comes for the issue of immune or not to the financial crisis, still the financial crisis will be affecting Islamic banking. If the person who are dedicated and doing better for an Islamic bank, that particular crisis will not be affected their operation most. So number 3, and on the other hand, number 4 here that I would like to say is something about duplication in terms about terminology and whatsoever. In my opinion, in Islamic bank is very simple. Just try to say if you are approaching an Islamic bank for getting the cash or liquidity, right? You just try to say financing. But for conventional, it is a loan. So just try to remember financing and a loan are totally different. Financing, because it reflects sale-based transaction. Loan, it reflects the loan agreements related between lending facility extended by a conventional bank to the customer. That will be number 4. And number 5 is basically some people, they are believing an Islamic bank as one of the center for the tourism. It's not tourism here, sorry for that, it's not tourism, but basically terrorism. When in terms about money laundering, in terms about terrorism, those of the kind of agenda that we giving emphasis to be avoided when it comes for an Islamic banking operation. Islamic bank is not a center for the money laundering. It's not a center for the terrorism. But what they are doing here is basically to be operated on the principle of moderation, to be operated on the principle of benevolence, whereby they will try to secure and try to uphold the importance of mutual well-being among individual and society at large. And last but not least, that I would like to suggest here, the misconception. Some people they are believing an Islamic bank is a little bit expensive, or even to very extreme misconception. They are saying it is a very killing Islamic banking practice, or when an individual is asking for the financing facility, but the amount of debt is very huge to a certain extent. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, when we are talking about the issue, right, beginning 2004, Islamic Bank through the Bank Negara Malaysia, right, Bank Negara Malaysia, and then instructed the Islamic Bank to offer floating rate. Accordingly, floating rate come with a ceiling and also floor, whereby that ceiling will be curving whatsoever the increment beyond that particular ceiling, right, due to the inflation, due to the OPR increased by Bank Negara Malaysia. So there will be ceiling and there will be ceiling and there will be floor as well. So the rate will be fluctuated, bouncing around a particular parameter, will not be greater than what has been already set and determined by an Islamic bank. So which means that if I'm saying Islamic bank is expensive, is not very accurate, but the thing that we can say here, it is competitive rather than expensive. Say for instance, when we are talking about musyarakah financing, for mortgage is something very brilliant innovation to a certain extent, and it is a kind of innovation that basically very competitive in terms about the pricing, calculation of the pricing, or even the monthly installment pricing will be similar in line with the conventional, or even when it comes for the issue of estimating the balance of the financing amount will be comparable with conventional. Unlike Tawarruk, unlike by Vitamin Ajil, this contract apply for the mortgage, right? BBA and also Tawarruk can only be useful when the customer is intended to purchase that particular property or house or asset for a lifetime. So which means that he is not intended to resell or to make this particular facility or house as an investment. If that person is trying to do something like that, and then this will be difficult for him, because at the end of the day, the outstanding balance for the Tawarruk and also for BBA will be expensive, will be huge as compared to conventional mortgage, conventional home loan, the peer or the counterpart. So I do believe the future outlook, right? The future outlook for an Islamic bank, we have many things to be done, and then I would like to stress about two particular important issue when it comes for future Islamic bank. The first thing that I would like to suggest is about digitalization of Islamic banking operation. We cannot today rely on the physical, but in the future, the investment, the opening for all of the account, the integration of Islamic banking product whatsoever should be done, if possible, at the very high degree of digitalization. Just try to capture the potential of Islamic fintech or the Islamic financial technology, whereby we are looking at that kind of possibility for being one of the very borderless Islamic banking transaction. So the first thing that always be believing digitalization or plus Islamic financial technology, or some say fintech. And the second one that I would like to provide a very good understanding here is about BBI, so value-based intermediations. So this value-based intermediation introduced in 2018 by Bank Negara Malaysia. But what I'm trying to highlight here, in the future, if possible, Islamic bank should provide and innovate more products. The product will be capturing those of the individual affected by the pandemic, right? The B40 or even the M40, whereby they are affected most by the health crisis, the COVID-19. So if possible, Islamic bank should coming out with this particular innovation. So which means that in the future, based on BBI, value-based intermediation introduced in 2018, I mean, the pillar will be based on these three particular principles: people, profit, and planet. And because of that, also I'm suggesting, if possible, in Islamic bank in the future, there will be creating the product that will be capturing the affluent market. I mean, those of the rich people. And then the second one, the very moderate level of society in terms about their own income. And then the third one, the Islamic bank will be generating and will be creating the product that will be best capture the poor people and also needy people, to ensure that they will be still part of the Islamic banking system development. On that note, thank you so much. And everything that I'm providing is just kind of my opinions. What is good is basically from the Almighty Allah Azza wa Jalla. What is bad is derived from myself. Anyway, thank you for listening, and Assalamualaikum.